Hi, and welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to do a review and comparison of the Mackie Onyx16. Mackie sent me this board because, as you'll notice on the channel, I've done a lot of tutorials for the Traction Waveform digital audio workstation. When you buy many Mackie products like this mixer or one of their interfaces, you get a license for a version of the waveform DAW called Waveform OEM. It's a very full-featured digital audio workstation. I've been testing a pre-release version of Waveform for a while now, and I wanted to test using one of the Mackie products. I also recently did a 3-part series on restoring an original Mackie CR1604, and I thought it would be fun to compare the old and new models. For several weeks, I used the Onyx16 as my main mixer. You may have seen it in the background in other recent videos. I prefer to use an actual mixer as an audio interface in my setups. I just like the ability to plug in all my sources directly to a mixer, guitar processors, keyboards, and that way, I don't even have to turn the computer on if I just want to play, practice, or test something out. A mixer in this format has been the core of my system for a long time. So let's get started. The first 8 channels are mono with separate microphone and line level inputs on the back. The next 4 channels can be used as 4 additional microphone inputs or as stereo line level inputs. The last one, 1718, is a special channel with Bluetooth pairing for your phone and an 1/8" stereo input. This channel also has left and right 1/4" inputs on the back. I will explain the layout of the channel strip shortly, but first, let's take a look at the back. So, around back, you can see that we have the typical array of jacks that you would find on a compact mixer. Main left and right XLR outputs for powered speakers for live sound, left and right balanced control room outputs for project studios. You also have the 2 monitor sends for wedges. You could use them together for stereo in-ear monitors. Here are the channel 1718 inputs I mentioned a minute ago. Here you have an output to connect an external effects device and also a foot switch input that you can use to bypass the internal effects. You would use this, for example, if you want to talk between songs without reverb or echo in a live situation. Looking at the first 4 channels, you can see XLR microphone inputs and 1/4" jacks. Channels 1 and 2 can be switched to high impedance, so you can directly connect a guitar or bass. A bonus feature of the Onyx16 is that channels 4 through 8 have inserts. You can use an insert patch cable to patch in a compressor or EQ. Channels 10 through 16 accept 4 more XLR mic inputs or 4 stereo line level inputs. You can use those for guitar processors or maybe a stereo keyboard. And as you can see, they're also labeled as balanced and unbalanced. So here's the USB connection. This may be an interesting choice. I wonder why they chose to use a USB Type-B connector. I would rather have seen USB Type-C on a new device. You often see Type-B on compact mixers and audio interfaces and other devices like printers. To justify this, it's a pretty tough connector, and you can easily connect this to anything on the other end with the correct cable. And this connection is how the Onyx connects to your computer as a 16:4 audio interface. By 16:4, I mean that you can basically record off the first 16 channels from the front panel, and then you can play back on 2 stereo channels. It's not like you would use this for multi-track analog summing, but it is a very capable multi-track audio interface. And I didn't mention, but it has an IEC power cord jack and a power switch. But now that you've seen the back, let's walk through the rest of the features. One of the first things about this mixer that you notice is that it's colorful. For example, look at the EQ section of channel 1. The boost cut knobs are blue, the mid-range sweep is white. It makes it easy to grab the correct control. At the top, you've got the typical gain knob to adjust to different kinds of mics and source levels. There is 100 cut low cut filter buttons on each channel. And as I mentioned before, you have a high Z button on channels 1 and 2. If you want to use some sort of amp simulator in software, then you can just go direct with your guitar or bass. These channels appear as channels 1 and 2 in your digital audio workstation. Each channel has an EQ bypass button. This is a unique feature in this price range. I mean, you see it in higher end mixers. The EQ button allows you to take the EQ in and out. I found this particularly useful because you can dial in some EQ and easily compare it to having that EQ in or out with this button. And by the way, channel EQ is not recorded when using this as an audio interface. Moving down, you have these auxes. The auxes are sends. You can send from this channel to the monitor 1 or the monitor 2 output, which I showed you on the back. The next send is for effects. That allows you to add effects from the internal effects processor or an external one if you have it patched in. The internal effects are actually quite nice. I'll talk more about that in just a bit. Next, you have the typical pan control, and then you have mute and solo. Mute and solo buttons have nice big graphics on them. When you hit solo, that light comes on, and you have the Mackie's traditional Rude solo light. It's a really bright blinking light in the main section that makes it really obvious that you've got something soloed. 60mm faders, they've got a nice feel to them. One thing that's different on this board and worth noting, there is a bus assignment button at the bottom of each channel. Normally you see bus selection on boards that have a number of subchannels. In that case, you choose the destination bus for the channel. But on this mixer, you really only choose to send to the left, right, main, or not. In general, to operate as a normal board, you'd need this pushed in. And I've had a couple of times, especially when I was first using this, that I didn't realize this and got no sound. The option not to assign a channel to the left, right, main is useful. You might want to bring something into a channel, be able to mix into the monitors or record it, but not go out to the main. So there's a good reason why it's like that, and it's useful, but it can throw you off if you don't realize it. For standard mixer operation, you're going to need to have this pushed in. Let's talk a bit more about the built-in effects. The effects send knobs are a cool yellow color. Use that to send some of the channel over to the effects processor. The effects processor has a nice color screen along with an encoder that has an integrated push to select button. It's way more programmable than you would typically see on a mixer like this. Right now you see it set to delay. You can navigate to other settings and push to select. There are other pages, for example EQ. And then step back with the dedicated back button. Choose from typical effects like delay, reverb, and echo, or chorus effects. If you look at comparable boards, they don't have something like this. The effects fader sets the level for the overall effects mix. If you don't want to use the internal effects, you can use the effects send output and go from that send to some hardware effect and then bring it back in on a channel. Also here in the main section, you will find the SD card slot along with record and playback transport controls. This will allow you to make stereo recordings to an SD card. It's a great way to do a board recording of a show. Or if you're doing a voiceover, podcast, something like that, even if you're recording to your digital audio workstation, you may want to make a backup recording to the SD card. Also in the main section, you've got the ability to send your effects to the monitors, control the control room level, the solo level, and the headphone level. And there are also separate faders for each monitor mix. So now you know the basic controls. Now, an important thing here. Normally the main mix appears in your DAW on inputs 17, 18, which is really useful. The problem is that many applications don't understand multi-track audio. Video chat, streaming, and screen capture applications often only record from inputs 1 and 2. Engage the Send 1-2 button and the main mix will appear to any application as inputs 1 and 2. Mix whatever you want on channels 1 through 16 and record a stream to these kinds of applications. This simplifies getting audio into Zoom, Teams, Skype, or any type of live streaming system. You can also use this for loopback recording. Set up whatever you want to record on the USB returns and start recording inputs 1 and 2. This allows you to loop back and record anything you can hear from your computer. Let's talk more about the audio interface. When connected to your computer, you're going to see these channels as inputs in your digital audio workstation. That's for channels 1 through 16. And like I said before, 1718 appears to your DAW as a stereo mix of the other channels. For playback, typically, you're going to play back from your computer into the USB out 1-2, which you can bring back here by pushing this button. The fader then controls the computer level. You also have USB out 3-4, which can come back on the next channel. So you have 2 stereo returns from your computer or DAW. On 1718, you have a convenient 1/8" line in here. Next, there is Bluetooth pairing for your phone. Whatever you bring into this channel, you can also send off to the monitors. These options are great for break music or backing tracks. On the main strip here, you can see we've got the jack for headphones, 48-volt phantom power for microphones that need that. It's just a single option here. So that turns it on for all the mic preamps in the mixer. There's a power button, the left and right meters. Here's the Rude solo light. When you solo a channel, that will assign the main meters to the soloed channel. That helps a lot with gain staging. Put the channel in solo mode, then look at the meters over here and adjust the gain up here. It's exactly the same thing we had in the original Mackie CR1604. You start with the fader at unity gain, hit the solo button. That throws the metering over to the main meters, and then you adjust the gain here so the meters peak near the middle. The newer gain knobs on these are nicer than the gain knobs we had historically. Now we've covered the main features of the Onyx16. You see that it's a nice compact format. The main plate here is metal, the sides are plastic. I believe these come off and there's a rack mount kit that's optional. And these mixers also come in different sizes with different numbers of channels. There are bigger ones as well as smaller ones. Like I showed you in the beginning, the jack field is always on the back. So this is one of the things to consider before buying a compact mixer like this. In a desktop setup or live sound situation, having the jacks in the back is probably desirable, no problem at all. The classic CR1604 allowed you to configure the jack field in different ways. It could be on the back, it could be in behind, or it could be on the top. I discussed that in more detail in the CR1604 restoration video series. Now, having the jack field face upwards is more convenient if you're going to rack mount the mixer into a sidecar type rack furniture. With the classic mixer, the Rotopod option allowed you to do this. The main competitor to the Onyx16 is the PreSonus AR16c, and it has the jacks facing up rather than back. I would say that when comparing the Onyx16 and the PreSonus AR16c feature for feature, they are otherwise very similar in price and features. The bottom line, if you prefer to have the jacks facing up, then you probably want to look at the PreSonus product compared to this. Apart from that, the Onyx16 has a more flexible effects section, inserts on channels 5 through 8, and EQ that you can engage or disengage on each channel. The basic capabilities as an audio interface are almost identical between the two boards. The ability to send the mix to USB inputs 1 and 2, SD card recording, and overall quality is just about the same. The PreSonus has a USB-C jack, which I think is slightly preferable over the USB-B jack on the Mackie. Over the last several weeks, while using the Onyx16 as my main mixer, I really enjoyed this board. There are certainly mixers that have more capabilities or flexibility, but they also come in at a higher price point. I hope this helps you understand the new Onyx16 for Mackie a little bit better. I've had a great time using this, and hopefully this information will be helpful if you're considering a mixer like this, or you just want to see what's new in audio recording and sound gear. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in another video very soon.